75 cartel speedboats entered a box with no exits. None were supposed to leave. You're about to see how a P-8 Poseidon, a lights-out surface force, and 18 SEALs turned the Caribbean into Killbox Delta 47. We start with the first ping. Synthetic aperture radar paints a speeding swarm.
It's early September. President Donald Trump has ordered a series of controversial military strikes on boats in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. The administration says the vessels were smuggling drugs from Venezuela and from Colombia. But officials in both countries, and many in Washington, are questioning whether that's true. They claim the 11 people killed were linked to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Maduro denied it.
Venezuela es un país libre de producción de hoja de coca.
It started on September 2nd, when President Trump posted a video online that showed what he said was a strike on a, quote, Venezuelan narco-terrorist boat.
Low-band radio pulses betray command links to Sinaloa's maritime wing. Then the trap snaps shut. 2 destroyers, an LCS, 3 Coast Guard cutters, MH-60RS, and an MQ-9 Guardian move in silent. How do you cage a fleet moving at 40 knots without firing first? Stay with me. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
So what's your assessment of where things stand in the Caribbean, and more specifically with the regime in Venezuela?
Well, Trump has some tremendous maritime surveillance and strike options in place. The Gravely, obviously part of the Ford carrier strike group for the illegal immigration and all the chaos that those cartels are causing us.
6 national security Democrats raised eyebrows this week when they put out a video saying to military and intelligence personnel, you don't necessarily need to follow all of your orders.
Our newest and biggest carrier, Air Wing 8's got a lot of great options. But this is all to keep pressure on Maduro. Remember, part of the Navy's mission is preventing piracy on the high seas. Trump is really clear that he wants to end the drug boats.
They ran 40 knots into nothing. No horizon lights. No radar pings. So why did none of them see the wall until the water started to narrow and the options fell away? The problem was never speed, it was shape. 75 fast boats spread wide, each hauling bricks in the 27 to 36 kilo range, moved like a loose net that probed for gaps, not a convoy begging to be chased. If you chase, you lose the other 74. If you spook, they scatter, dump, and reset. The goal shifts from capture to confinement. Close the space without telling the swarm the space exists. That took 3 weeks of quiet work. Surface ships went dark, no deck lights, no steady radars, even navigation displays dimmed behind red lenses so eyes stayed night adapted.
You suggested you've made a decision about what you want to do next to Venezuela. I understand you don't want to tip your hand, but is there anything you're ready to rule out at this point? Are you ruling out U.S. troops on the ground?
No, I don't rule out that. I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela. I'm not in love with the people running Venezuela. I love
Justin Maduro wants to talk. Are you prepared to speak with him directly? Would you commit to doing that before you order strikes?
Yeah, I probably would talk to him. Yeah, I talk to everybody in Venezuela. I love the people of Venezuela, but what they've done to this country, and I really say this, what Biden and the Democrats have done to this country can never, ever be forgotten.
Overhead, a P-8 Poseidon kept a high orbit and dragged a synthetic aperture radar pass across swells that would blind a normal scope. Meanwhile, the electronic support folks listened down in the weeds. Low-band bursts and brief, cheap link pulses kept lighting the same node off the coast. One maritime controller fed timing cues to runners who thought they were invisible. Sensor fusion made the wall before any hull saw it. SAR cut through weather and spray and gave hard shapes with wake vectors, not guesses. Electronic ears plotted who talked to whom and when the messages spiked, a heartbeat for the network. From past seizures, sat phones coughed up GPS history that taught where loaders like to stage, where handoffs usually bent south, and what clean lanes looked like on a Tuesday night. Stack those layers and the sea stops being open. It turns into lanes, curves, and choke points. The boats didn't know they'd already stepped between rails. Killbox Delta 47 was that rail set written in time, angles, and silence. Think of a corral drawn in grease pencil on a chart, 4 corners, a lid, and a plan to tighten. 2 destroyers and a littoral combat ship held the long legs, 3 Coast Guard cutters took the short faces, and the air wing stitched the roof with MH-60 RS and a Guardian unmanned eye. The box wasn't nailed to coordinates. It was tied to the speed and drift of the target mass and the wind that pushed the spray. The timing ladder looked simple on the board and savage in motion. The P-8 tagged clusters and noted outliers that liked to test edges. Cutters didn't drag race. They slid to seams where 2 clusters would have to pass if they stayed on schedule. SEAL Team 4 broke into boarding stacks, each with a rope point on a helo, thermal goggles set for sea spray, and tools to kill an engine fast without cracking a block. Radio silence held. No searchlights. No sweeping radars. Hand signals and short, shielded bursts only when the deck teams had to sink. That lack of radar became the blade. Passive sensors don't shout. Infrared search and track watched for heat blooms from outboard exhausts. ESM plotted the dirty chatter that never quite goes away in a smuggling run. SAR fed down quietly through tight pipes to the ships and helos so no one had to break silence to ask for a picture. The fleet edged, then flexed, then breathed in. Every meter the formation moved, an exit narrowed. The pinch hit from 2 jaws and a nudge. North, helicopters eased stragglers to turn with loud hailers and the simple fact of a machine hanging off their beam at night. No shots. Just presence and rotor wash that made a light hull skate the wrong way. South, cutters cut across wakes at angles that stole knots, forced throttles to chicken wing, and stacked boats into neat, manageable files. Boarding teams came in quick, hooks, ropes, then hands on engines. Fuel lines crimped, plugs pulled, kill switches taped. Crews went face down, wrists bound, cargo tagged by lot and seal. So how do you cage a fleet at speed without firing first? You make the ocean a hallway. Ships become walls that you don't see until your wake hits them. Helicopters are the doors that close where you think there's space. And above it all, a sensor ceiling reads every flinch and writes your next turn for you. In the end, the swarm didn't crash. It complied because running meant ramming steel. The show everyone saw was the takedown, boats stopped, bundles stacked, crews secured. The real leverage sat cold and quiet in Pelican cases, phones full of routes, ledgers with weights and codes, numbers that tied the corridor to paymasters who rent seas by the week. This was system defeat. Not a chase. Stealth, timing, and signals turned blue water into a controlled corridor where speed meant nothing and choices collapsed to one. You saw it in layers that stacked into control. SAR drew bodies and wakes, SIGINT mapped the pulse of command, boarding teams closed with cold hands and clean steps. Which mattered most to you, SAR, SIGINT, or the teams on the rails? Comment your choice below, and subscribe if you want deeper breakdowns on sensors and special operations at sea. One trap shut a corridor. The bigger fight is money and routes. Map those, and the next swarm dies before it forms.